Okay. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Thriving Adoptees podcast. And I've been saying this quite a lot recently. Have we got a guest for you? Now, this lady I spoke to last week, Candi Byrne, and I looked back and I've got 6 pages of scribbled notes of genius from Candi. So I'm really looking forward to diving into our conversation with you again today, Candi.
Oh, thank you, Simon. I really appreciate the invitation to speak with your listeners. And I have said this before, and I'll say it for the recording, is that I just really appreciate your perspective on the adoption issue and your mission to help people really heal from the stories that they tell themselves about adoption.
Thank you. And perspective is the key word, right? Perspective is one of our favorite words, one of my favorite words. And when I set out to start the podcast, I thought I need to bring other people's perspectives. It can't just be about my perspective, right? Because my healing story, if we want to call it that, is different to everybody else's healing story. So we want to I want to showcase other people's perspectives. And when we spoke last week, I got 6 pages of gems on your perspective. But before we started recording today, you were talking about a shift in your perspective when you were driving. You're doing a long commute, and something occurred for you. So could you start by sharing what that was about, Candi?
Sure. I was on this really long, horrible commute, and the lines of taillights are ahead of me. It's sort of almost a meditative kind of thing. And I was thinking about the hole that is in my life. What is the hole? I'm always looking after, where's the hole? What do I need to fill that hole? That longing for love, and so what came to me, I got this download very clearly that said, there is no hole. There's no hole. We don't have anything to fill. What we have instead of a hole is the illusion that there is something missing. We are complete and total divine human beings, right? We have our core is our luminous essence. And what we think of the holes are the stories that are blocking that fullest expression of our luminous essence. And that was just such a relief to me to realize that if it's story, I can change the story. I've done it before. And stories are beliefs that we really believe that these stories are true, right? We've got stories, and it's like, I'm adopted and therefore I am unlovable, and somebody gave me up. It looks like you want to say something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to take you back to the first thing that came to mind was a little bit of a frivolous thing, but a kind of a nice bumper sticker, right? So you've got whole, right? You've got a whole.
WHOLE. Yeah, I got HOLE, right?
Yeah, but actually, we are all whole with a W in front of that.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
And we need to see that for ourselves. So, yeah, there's no such
absolutely.
thing. Yeah.
And I've got this image that I will share with you and with other people. We can post it on there. But what I have is this image that looks like a very colorful soccer ball, and in the center is our luminous essence. And what blocks us are these stories, and it just prevents us from being prismatic. Like, I love that you've got a diamond as your as your logo, right? Because we're prismatic. We've got so many facets to us, and some of these facets just get clouded by the stories, by these beliefs that we know are true. We know because we got the evidence that has been given to us time and again, that we've collected this evidence that says, oh yes, this story is true. I'm unlovable. And here's how I know it, because I can say this, this, and this.
Okay. So I want to take you back to the other one of the other truth bombs that you dropped last week, in terms of that whole, right? That whole, and now we're going back a step, listeners, to the whole, a whole with without the double W in front of you. So
correct.
You came up with this word. You know the word I'm talking about is
the mother hunger.
The mother hunger, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah. The mother hunger is the, I guess, the first cause of our whole, perhaps. Would you say it that way?
Yeah, I think not only on a human level, but almost on a metaphysical level. Like, this is our birthright, is to be mothered, right? Where and to be parented. We always focus on the mother, and there's definitely something going on with father hunger as well. So we're not letting guys off the hook here. And so that mother hunger is that where's that nurturing, where's that unconditional love, which in human existence there is no such thing as unconditional love. There are always conditions. Now, they might be negative conditions, they might be positive conditions, but there's always conditions to it, because we're human beings. We're brought up by people who put stories and expectations on us. So the expectation that there's unconditional love, I don't know. Prove it. Show me somebody who's experienced unconditional love. But anyway, so the mother hunger is, if we don't have, this connection to the person who created us, right? We feel like, oh, there's something missing. We need that. We were ripped away, which is true. We were taken away from the person who created us, or half of the person who created us. And so then we see evidence as we come online as a cognitive child and then adult. We see things out in the world that, oh, I'm missing that. My mom didn't give me that. This person really isn't my mom, because we see that mothers are supposed to have the ones who have given birth to us, have these stories. I labored, I carried you with love, you were born in love. Well, adoptees, a lot of us were born in shame, right? We're created in shame. We're born in shame, and then there is this shame that is placed upon us, shame that is placed on potentially the birth people, the birth family. What are people going to think? There's a very religious bent to that whole aspect of things. There's even shame, I think, that's put onto the adoptive parents that, oh, for most of them, they couldn't have children, So I'm getting far afield of mother hunger, but we have this story of how families are supposed to be, and particularly how mothers are. The ones who are archetypal, right? Where we're like, oh, we still have this idea that mothers are giving everything up for us, and when they don't, we're like, well, aren't I worth that? Aren't I worth the sacrifice that mothers are supposed to make for their kids? I didn't get a good one. If I had that other one, like, there's something missing. And what it is that we don't learn how to mother ourselves, right? That's really where it gets to. When you feel that mother hunger, that's relying on an external, as opposed to really anchoring into that luminous essence, our selves, and going, this is what's important. This is where we get that nurturing, where we control control the nurturing, right? We didn't get control over anything, and sometimes not even control over who we are, because we don't have, the basic metrics or information that it's our, in my humble opinion, our birthright to have. I had this argument with my son about, I said, it's my civil right to know who I was born to. And he was not supportive of that idea. And I said, anybody with $25 can send in and get their original birth certificate. I cannot. And so that sort of fed this idea of, that was part of my evidence that I'm not worthy because my birth mother gave me up, and her whole family gave, and my mother was terrible, and so therefore I have this mother hunger for somebody to just take care of me. And who's the only person who can do that?
Yeah.
Ourselves, right?
So we're seeing we're seeing a we're seeing our own evidence as kind of incontrovertible, aren't we?
Oh, for sure, because we've got, as we've got a belief, right? And our belief, as I've said before, it's an accretion of calcified thoughts supported by evidence. And what I mean by that is, like, are you familiar with the game Jenga?
Yes.
Do you know what Jenga is? And so for your listeners, if you're not familiar, it's a tower. It's a seemingly solid tower of individual little wooden blocks that are put together. And the idea is to poke out one at a time and not let the tower fall. So whoever is the last person of something and the tower falls. Well, this is with doing the kind of thought work on these beliefs. So our beliefs are like Jenga. They're all these things put together. And in our mind, they're super glued together by this evidence, because we're seeing it through that perspective, through that lens of things. And so, it's the solid pillar. And we're looking at it not as the individual thoughts that went into this belief, but it's the belief itself. It's solid until you start poking at it, which is where, healing comes from. And getting, I don't think we actually get over something. I think we get past it. We learn to integrate it. It becomes compost for what we go forward in our life. But we don't, I mean, it can transmute, but it's still there. But we look at it differently. It's a different perspective. These beliefs, I also use the metaphor or analogy of looking through a kaleidoscope. So if you look through a kaleidoscope and you see the pattern that's down there, with just a simple shift, right? Just a little shift, you get a completely different pattern down there. Now, the pieces inside the kaleidoscope haven't changed, right? So that's our thoughts are down there. Our belief is the kaleidoscope, and this shifting is where we go, oh, I can see things differently now. Oh, okay. And you can keep twisting it, and you can see it in different ways. And um, that's how we start dissolving or managing the thoughts that then go into these beliefs. And we start seeing the evidence in different ways. We start seeing it through a different lens, a different perspective. When we can get perspective and go, oh, I'm not the solid block of Jenga. I like, let me step back and go, let me pull one of these pieces out. I see I can pull one of these pieces out. They're not glued in there. And let me look at this. And then that leaves a little space for us to go, huh, it really felt true to me. Like that block, that Jenga block really felt true until you start examining, doing inquiry, not like, oh, what's wrong with me kind of thing. Because believe me, I did that for years and years. In my journal, I had I said, what is my problem, so often that I wrote it as I was writing it, that I just condensed it down to the acronym WIMP. What is my problem? And so as I'm seeing page WIMP, 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 and I was like, wow, whoa, I need to look at that differently, because I'm accreting, I'm calcifying, I am adding more evidence by being self-harming, by looking externally for evidence rather than internally. What do I want instead? Right? That's such a powerful question. What do I want instead? What do I want instead of the idea that I'm, that I had the wrong mothering. I didn't get the good mom. It would, if I were a different person, my birth mother would have been different. Perhaps she would have kept me. If I had been a different person, maybe my own mother would have raised me differently, and I wouldn't be feeling what I knew to be true, and I'm air quoting true, that I was missing something.
Yeah. Wow, there's so far I can go. There's so much there to get my teeth into. Just thinking about where I would go next with it. So what you're saying, I think, is that the mother hunger is the Jenga tower. And,
yeah.
Or and we believe that so that the hole in us is a hole in our belly, and mother hunger is a description of the need to satiate that.
Right.
We believe the mother is going to fill the mother-shaped hole in our bellies, and that is a belief, and that belief is not the truth.
Correct. It feels very true to us. It feels undeniable to some people, and it's a story that we tell ourselves because of the shame lens that our biological creation comes through. It's shame. We are given away by the people who are supposed to love us the most. Like, if that's not shame.
Yeah.
But shame is placed on us. It's not innate to us, but we take the shame, the external part of it, and then we start making stories for it. We start, putting those thoughts together with that evidence glue that, yeah. If we look at it through that lens of, I'm not worthy, I'm enough, I should have, where is the mommy part of me that is missing? And if we step back and say, there's nothing missing, there's no hole, that starts to, it's a solvent to that evidence. And we can start looking at other ways that, oh, I am loved, I am lovable. It's this thought work that becomes the solvent, and that we are in control of that. So up until, and of course, anybody who's even raised by their own biological people, you don't have control over things for a certain while. And what we end up with is we think that we don't have control. Like, this is the way it is. And if we either adopt that, and I'm using the term, we either take on those stories and expectations that are placed on us externally, we either take those and just adapt to that, or we do the exact opposite, or we find a way to manage within that structure. And all of that is guided by external rather than internal, right? So that's where all the suffering is. It's outside, because we're trying to make those external rules, guidelines, strictures, we're trying to fit ourselves within that, but that's not our true self. It's not our true self.
Not true. So
But we we struggle against it because it's external. And when we take the control of going, what do I want instead? What it does create a different, it could potentially create a different kind of suffering, which is, ooh, if I step outside of this belief that is, supported by these thoughts and this evidence that's coming in from all of these external places, if I step outside of this, what's going to happen? I'm going to be alone. Maybe I won't find my people. I must be wrong to not feel the way that they think I should be feeling. So the idea of taking control of that, it could be terrifying. And is it any more terrifying than continuing to live a life that is not your own life, thinking that there's these holes, feeling there's a hunger that only someone else can fill?
So you came up with this phrase, stewing in the womb, last week, which I thought
Yeah.
was a brilliant one. So is stewing in the womb, is that the fact, is that like us taking a bath in shame? Is that what you mean by stewing in the womb?
Oh, and absolutely. Yeah, and we are, so not only is it the shame part of things, so that's the emotional piece, that we are getting that constant flow of, there's, I don't want this, what am I going to do? I mean, even if there's one single thought of, oh, I'm pregnant and I don't want to be, like that, immediately that's triggering hormones. So there's actual biology that the mother is feeling. It's being fed, from her external sources, and we're just in there stewing in those, her toxic hormones, her cortisol, her anxiety, whatever way that she might be trying to manage her feelings. Like we're all a part of that. Yeah. So we're yeah, we're just stewing in the womb of her anxiety and that shame, that is, at some level there's a shame, because i I mean, and again, we don't know what she's thinking. Like, is she thinking, oh, I'm going to give this kid away because it's the best thing for them? It still, there's and yet I have to, her being the one saying, and yet I have to release this. So she's already creating like a mother hunger in the fetus, because she's already planning on being on a diet, right? A diet of getting rid of this child. And I say that, I know that there are a number of different ways, but it's basically like, this is why I named my book Regifted, right? Because regifting is, the concept is, you get a beautiful, wonderful gift, but it's just not the right size for you, or it doesn't fit, or it doesn't match your decor, and so you give it to somebody else. And so, but still, it doesn't fit for you. So this is what is being constantly communicated to the unborn, however people want to think about that, but it's being communicated the whole time. You're stewing in that idea of, you're not enough. You're not enough for me. You're not worth fighting for. That was my biggest belief, that, oh, it was it was like the giant outdoor size Jenga, that you're not worth fighting for. And I had all manner of evidence to support that. And I still work with it. I had a thought yesterday that was like, oh, here we go again. It's another, it's an the glue, the evidence that holds that tower together for me is very strong. And I've done a lot to dissolve those pieces that hold it together, but every once in a while it still comes up.
So this area is totally fascinating for me, because and I think we got onto this subject last week because one of us said the word beliefs first. I don't know who it was, but because I come from a world of so my before I came into the adoption community, I was in the kind of business improvement community, should we say? I was trying to improve my business. And from that, I kind of got into some sort of self-development stuff. And in those spaces, self-limiting beliefs are, the key target, right? They're the key target. We've got to, because the self-limiting belief it is, what's the word? It's kind of impinging. It's harming the growth of one's business, right? That's the idea.
Sure.
You need to shoot for the stars with your business, and then you might get to the moon, but at the moment you're only shooting for the end of the yard, right, or the drive. So self-limiting beliefs are big in the self-improvement community, right? But we don't hear them at all in the adoption community. All we hear in the adoption community is trauma, basically.
Right.
So so first off, do you agree, or is it just me that's thinking it this way? Do you think that's true?
Oh, that trauma is it's the buzzword in the adoption community. And trauma to me, and I know you've mentioned Van der Kolk a number of times, and trauma is a story. Now, that is not to say, before anybody jumps on me about this, that we have circumstances in our lives that hold up in court kind of circumstances. Today is Tuesday, like everybody's going to agree with that. But what you place upon that is where the story comes in. The trauma is continuing to stew in the story, that's where the suffering comes from. So we can change the story of how we're processing the circumstance that happened to us. And for people who've experienced rape, torture, all this kind of stuff, I'm not minimizing the trauma that comes from that. And there are ways to manage the story of what it means about us that it happened to us. That's where we get into the suffering piece of it. And that's where the ability to take control of that particular story, what we've made it mean, and then how we can evolve, level up from that, what we can take from this, because beliefs can be negative or they can be positive, right? And we tend to focus on the negative beliefs, the limiting beliefs. What if we focused on the positive part of things? We can come up with equal amounts of evidence. Now, our brains have a negativity bias, so we tend to see the negative pieces first. But that's where practices like gratitude come in, where so I'm getting far afield of the trauma, but I do agree that that in the adoption community that there is a focus on trauma, because there are some biological things that happen to us that we don't have control over until we're further along in our adulthood. But by that point, it feels so true to us that we don't feel like there is any, number one, that there's no way to change, but number two, that there is no changing because it is the truth. That's where I think the trauma piece with adoption, it's the point of looking at that what is it creating in us? What are the holes that we think we have because of adoption? And then how can we remove the veil of the stories, because we know human being inside of us.
So I'm constantly trying to make my language more precise, and to, because the people that really change my world for me are the ones with that precise language that gets right to the bottom of this. And one of the questions that I came up with to address this is that there's this event, a traumatic event, a visceral loss. Okay, so it's the visceral loss, and I talk about like bringing a puppy home for the first night, right, and the puppy is crying for its mum, and that's us, right? So that's a visceral loss. That's the essence of the trauma. But that puppy can't think, and that 5-week-old Simon Jonathan Ben or David Anthony Flower, he couldn't think. He didn't have any beliefs. So somewhere along the way, what was a visceral loss became a belief that but it's a bit mental talking about yourself in the third party, isn't it? A visceral loss became a belief that she didn't love me enough to keep me. So somewhere, something that is physical and visceral becomes something that is mental, and that's why that's kind of that thought that came to me is the it prompted me to realize that what we're talking about here is beliefs, and it came back to me again because I suspected, right? I suspected, or I questioned the fact, or I was curious, or I believed, I suspected that adoption had messed me up. And then I read The Primal Wound, and that was the point of which, I believe. So I didn't believe I was primarily wounded until I read The Primal Wound. So the belief was something that came in time. We're born believing.
Right. You could put words to it. You knew something innately was going on. I would suspect, that you're feeling something and there's no concrete words to put around it, or it doesn't come together into a place of, oh, this makes sense now, why I feel the way that I feel. And so the those kind of moments. I had a therapist, an early on therapist, and she said 4 words to me that have changed my life and the way that I look at things. It was, I gave her my list of grievances and about my adoptive mother, and she looked at me and she said, "So what? Now what?" I was like, boom. So what that this is the way that she treated you? You are an adult. Now, what are you going to do? How are you going to change these things? And she didn't say it, but in my coaching practice, it's and I think I said it earlier on, it's like, what do you want instead? What do you want instead? Okay, so yes, this happened, and yes, there's a legitimate reason biologically, you were stewing in the womb and all of this kind of stuff, and you've seen all of this evidence, you've created your own Jenga. Now what? Is this the way that you want to live? And what do you want instead? And that's where the really, I mean, it's simple. It's so simple to say you change your thoughts. It's not easy necessarily. I mean, it can be easy. You can change, boom, like this. I mean, I'm driving along at, 5 o'clock in the morning, and oh, I've got a hole. And then all of a sudden, oh no, there is no hole.
There is no hole.
There
Okay.
is no hole. So you can change your thoughts and the story at any time, no
Okay.
matter what has happened to you. Yeah.
Oh, I felt myself. I've got to interrupt Candi. I've got to interrupt Candi. I'm only going to interrupt you with your own wisdom. Okay.
Yes.
To make a distinction. You had a cosmic download, a cosmic email. Yeah. You had a cosmic email.
Yes.
The cosmic
Yes.
email arrived, which changed the thought. Yeah.
Yes.
So that cosmic email, that cosmic download didn't come from you. It came from the cosmos.
It did, and it came because I was opened, right? It's not the first one I've had. It's not the last one I've had. It's being like some people would say, oh, well, that's just, and I've had people and I've told them that story. They're like, oh, well, maybe that was just your ego. Maybe that was this. And it was like, hey, whatever it is, it's the words that came to me. So am I going to take them and move forward with them? Or am I going to go, oh, that's just BS. That's, I don't know where that came from.
So I think
We have the choice either way, right? We have that choice.
That's another kettle of bananas. Before we move on to that one. I want to take you back to kind of just play some around with something. So I think that the ego claims the work of the cosmos.
So say more about that.
So I could say, yeah, I had this thought. I realized that I hadn't believed that I was wounded until I read The Primal Wound. Okay, so that's me. Like I had that thought, right? So that's ego. A truer way to express that would be I was standing in the well, I wasn't standing in the shower actually. I was on a call with a coach and she said something, and then I had a completely fresh idea. A completely fresh idea came out of the blue to me, and that thought was, I didn't believe that I was wounded until I read The Primal Wound. So it's like the cosmos gave me that thought, and I was hanging out at the bus stop for insights. Having a coach is one of the things that you do if you want to have some insights, because the coach has got a different perspective.
Absolutely.
And it's hard for us to see the picture when we're in the frame. So when that coach said something that and something triggered within me, your therapist said something that triggered with you. So what? Now what? And that's the thing that dissolves the belief. That's the thing that unlearns the learning. That's the straw that broke the camel's back. That's the piece of Jenga that gets removed and the whole thing topples down.
Exactly. And here's the great part of it, is that you can rebuild the Jenga in the way that supports you by coming up, doing inquiry on your thoughts. It's getting a little bit of a remove and taking the look with compassion for a thought that you have, and inquiring, is it true? Can I absolutely know it's true? who would I be without, I mean, this is Byron Katie work, but
Byron Katie.
who would I be without, right? Who would I be without this thought? And when you look at those things, it's like, oh, so I can see that there's a story here. Now, it doesn't mean that you're going to get an immediate download or that it's going to be fixable right away, or that it's not going to lead to something else, as we said, new level, new devil. When you up level, there's something else to look at. And if you go, oh my God, it's another effing growth experience, and to think of that as a belief, like, oh my God, it's just another thing I have to do, rather than, oh, I must really be loved. I must really be lovable because I'm getting this opportunity. I'm getting downloads, like miraculous freaking downloads. These thoughts, where are they coming from? I'm open to this. And because I know that they don't define me, I'll take it into my luminous essence. Does this fit with who I truly am? If yes, then I'm like, ooh, thank you. That's a juicy new little gem I've gotten. If it's like, no, that feels like it's from, it's something being put on me, whether it's shame, a thought, expectation, you know, uh, whenever we have expectations of ourselves, somebody famously said, expectations are resentments waiting to bloom. And I was like, ah, that is so good. That is so good. Now, again, we're human beings, right? We're going to have these things, but when we can come back into ourselves, because that's where it all happens. I mean, that's the core of it, like literally the core of our essence is where all that kind of not only transformation, but translation, where it's like we just go, we bury it deep, it becomes compost for the other seeds that we plant without the shame on them. Seed, it's like our seed, like almost literally was planted with shame, that shame kind of coating on it. And we get the opportunity to build our new Jenga, to grow our garden without the shame. That's up to us. That's up to us. Again, sounds simple, ain't easy, but it's so totally worth it, because otherwise we get stuck. We're still stewing in the womb, but we're walking around in the world with wearing our womb stew.
Yeah. Yeah, I love the stewing in the womb, and I was trying to come up with some other ones that with some more metaphors that rhymed, right? So is there something called ambiotic fluid?
Mm-hmm.
So that's
Ambiotic,
yeah. So
amniotic fluid. Yeah.
So we are marinating in ambiotic anxiety.
Ooh, yeah.
So
we are.
Now, I just want to go past the point.
Or we did.
We did. I want to go back a stage, because if people are interested in this Byron Katie, right? So she's a big deal, right? And so if you Google Byron Katie, the work, you will find she has this 4-stage questionnaire, this 4-stage process by which you do the work. So if you're looking if you like the sound of what Candi's talking about, and you want to dive into that yourself, just go onto Google Byron Katie, the work. They call her Katie, don't they? Although Katie is a surname.
Katie, yeah.
Call her Katie. And you can do it. You can just download the four questions and do them yourself. I wanted to go back to something else, a question that came to my mind in terms of this shame, kind of maybe what's the opposite, shame and fear, and us searching for love. I mean, have you heard this thing that, I don't know who said this, love is what we are, not what we do. Have you heard that?
I don't know that I've heard those exact words, but I agree with the sentiment. Yeah.
So
we are just love. We're just big balls of love. But what does love mean? That's a triggering word for some people, what love is. And
yeah. Well, if love is what we are, then that's why the love doesn't have a hole in it.
No, there's no hole in love.
Love doesn't. Yeah, love doesn't have mother hunger, does it?
No, love just, it is. Love just is. Just is. There's no stories to love. There's no, do you deserve it? If somebody gets, 7 buckets of love, does that mean that there's less for me? No, there's just, it's unlimited, and it's sort of an existential mindset. And yet it's like, okay, well, if there's even the littlest hint of, could this be true? No, it can't be true for me. But that little flash of, is it true? Could it be true for me? Like, dive into that. Take a look at that. Um, dance to it. Make some art to it. Don't, a lot of people will say, just write down what comes to you. And I'm a big journaler and firmly believe in that. But if you're just starting the exploration, do something other than writing down the words, because you want to get out of your head and into your body. Like, go hug a tree and see what comes to you. Like, trees hug you back. There's no expectation that, you're going to have to be worthy to hug a tree.
Wow, Candi. Just conscious of time.
Right.
As always, listeners, I would check out the show notes. You can find more about Candi's book and her website, and check her out on Instagram. Is the book is it a straightforward memoir? To what extent has it got this kind of healing juice and belief shifting stuff that we've been talking about today? Is the book about? To what extent is it a straight memoir, and to what extent is it the healing stuff?
But I would say that it's probably 50-50. I mean, I had to tell, where I came from in order to tell where and how I got to where I was. But it does talk about, I think that that's the most hopeful part, is that there is hope, that even, with somebody who had such entrenched beliefs about what should be, that I was able to get beyond it. Yeah. And to understand that really all that struggle that I went through with the adoption thing, as I call it, is like, that really wasn't the story of it at all. I mean, it's getting to this divine essence part of it. Yeah.
Right.
So it's a very hopeful ending. Kind of hard at the beginning. It's kind of raw at the beginning, and then it gets into some woo-woo stuff. Completely, I'll be completely transparent. There's woo-woo stuff, and I used to be a skeptic, and miracles happen when you're open to them.
Yeah.
Like you showing up. I mean, you emailed me out of the blue, and I was like, oh, okay, this is cool. So spirit brought us together. So if spirit, that might offend some people or put them off, but I truly believe that we were meant to connect. We're all connected, right? We're all connected.
If they're still listening, right, 55 minutes on, then we have them. All right.
That's right.
It's the people that turned off 50 minutes ago that we got to be ready for stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'd say I was a skeptic too, but I think it's been really cool that spirit has brought us together, whatever it is that brought us together. And I love your metaphors. I think you're a maestro of metaphors, and often they alliterate, right? So that makes them even better. Thank you very much, Candi. Thank you,
Simon.
And we'll speak to you again very soon. Cheers.
Bye. All right. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.